This is a perfect example of how the Mossad works and all these other agencies that work for the Zionists. Of course, this is the campaigns against anti-Semitism. And of course, the Zionists and 80-something% of the people who call themselves Jews aren't even Jews, are Semitic. Everyone knows that. But of course, you say anything. But this is what they do, these Asian provocateurs. And so they like to use eye candy. Hot chicks, yacht girls, you know what I mean? The ones they pay a lot of money to walk around naked on their yachts. Well, they also have to do little things like this too. So this gal, we'll just watch what she does.
The reality is that at every demonstration there are many hundreds of Jewish people joining us, many in an organized Jewish bloc declaring themselves to be Jewish. Their presence is always warmly welcome. But then,
hi, my name is Reverend Hayley Ace. I'm a Christian minister. I've just got back from London.
Now, if anybody believes that she's a reverend,
I was standing at the edge of the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign March with some friends. As you can see, I am wearing my baseball cap, and it has a Star of David.
Shockingly, it has the Star of David on her baseball cap as she's walking around a pro-Palestine rally. I wonder what's going to happen.
And the words Israel High written on it. During the time that I was standing there, a man started shouting at me, who was...
Poor girl, oh, I feel so sad for her. A man shouted at her. Oh.
Completely, his face was covered apart from his eyes with a kafia, Palestinian headscarf.
Oh my God, he had a kafia
Off on him, started shouting at me. There was no interaction from my point of view.
Oh my God, he only had a kafia.
And he just started to shout horrible things. He said to me, F off, Jew, go back to Poland, go back to...
Oh my God, he said that? Oh my God, we've ever passed new laws to protect the hot freaking paid shill.
Poland. Obviously, Poland is where the Nazis built most of their concentration camps for the extermination of Jews.
Mind you, the Jews represented a very small fraction of the tens of millions of people that were slaughtered during World War II. They're never ever mentioned.
Man has been arrested now, but this is the reality of these protests, these marches. I don't understand how anyone can say they are peaceful.
Especially when you go there to provoke people. I imagine what's going to happen.
This is not the first time I have heard offensive type messages.
Oh, pretty little girl. I hope the paycheck was good.
And I just wanted to let you guys know.
Aww. Jewish people warmly welcome. Yeah, right. Especially when they're paid coadjutors and adjutors and agents. And everybody knows it. But you can't say something to the hot, pretty, paid shill who calls herself a fucking reverend. And I just can't understand what would have happened. What did I do wrong? I mean, and the thousands of people there, and they finally found that one guy to make that one photo op. Imagine that. So some guy told her to fuck off. And that was the end of the world. Oh my God. I feel so sorry for her. I really feel sorry for the sucker that has to spend the rest of his life with that odd witch. God. I swear people will do anything, and I mean anything, for a frickin' buck.
So my name's Emily. I'm a member of Namod, which is a member of the wider Jewish bloc on these marches.
Why are you here today?
I believe it is my solemn duty, not just as a Jew, but as a human being, to stand here and demand for an immediate ceasefire, and to show that these marches aren't an unsafe place for Jews. There are hundreds of us here today in solidarity with Palestinians.
What do you make of the political climate at the moment and the way Jews are being told to be in fear and be isolated as if they're not part of this movement?
I'm really horrified that our government is using like the very real rise in anti-Semitism, often fueled by the far right, to curb our rights to protest and to squash the Palestinian solidarity movement. Not in our names.
Cool. And this has been a kind of watershed moment in the community that a lot of people have been asked a big question about where you stand and what stand you take.
Yeah, I think there's been a quiet reckoning in our community, and you can see this because the bloc keeps growing, the movements keep growing, constituent organizations are just getting bigger and bigger. I've never been so sure that I will see a free Palestine.
And what do you make in particular of Robin Simcox and Lord Walney's roles?
I'm very tired of being told how to feel as a Jewish person by people who aren't Jewish. I'm tired of being told that I should be afraid when these marches are, by and large, extremely peaceful, and people are so lovely to us and so thankful to us. Really shows that they're very ignorant of Jewish opinion outside of their very small Zionist bubble. Join the Jewish blog. See what we're all about. Come speak to us. Come see what we're doing. Come on one of the marches. Because
But perhaps our callous indifference to human suffering is to be expected. We, after all, kill women and children on an even vaster scale in Iraq and Afghanistan. There will be more Palestinian children who die. There will be more UN schools used as a sanctuary by terrified families, blown to bits by Israeli bombs, with more than 40 killed, half of whom were women and children. There will be more emaciated, orphaned children. There will be more screaming or comatose wounded in the corridors of Gaza's glutted hospital corridors. And there will be more Israeli lies. For that is what governments do in war. They distort and manipulate the facts, knowing that propaganda is a vital instrument in wartime. The shelling of the UN school in Jabalia took place, Israel said, because Hamas fighters had been firing mortars from near the school entrance. And they offered proof, an aerial photo which showed the school and the mortar. But the photo it was uncovered was more than a year old. It was a lie. And lies permeate the absurd reports like the one on the front page of this Sunday's New York Times titled, "A Gaza War Full of Traps and Trickery." In this story, unnamed Israeli intelligence officials gave us a spin on the war worthy of the White House fabrications made on the eve of the Iraq War.
עבריינים! שוטר עבריין! מפקד האירוע הזה! היי! מה אתה עושה? קוראים לך?
רומי, אנחנו איתך! שוטר! שוטר! אל יהיה כשובר!
אני מתקשר לאמא שלה. שי, אני מתקשר לאמא שלה.
So, we're spending all our billions of dollars, our tax-earned money, and taking it away from our own children and our own country to support this thing we call, this entity called Zionist Israel. And this girl, all she did, she got arrested for saying Ben Gerv, or whatever the hell his name is a criminal. That's it. Anybody that's supporting Zionist Israel at this point has got their head so far up their ass, they have no clue what they're doing. But if this is their God, and there's God's plan, and their God wants this, I don't want anything to do with their God. King Chop, I guess what it is anyways. Former Prime Minister of Israel.
There's no such thing as
East and West Bank, no. East and West Bank was Palestine. I'm a Palestinian. From 21 until 48, I carried a Palestinian passport. There was no such thing in this area as Jews and Arabs and Palestinians. There were Jews and Arabs.
Well, it turns out now they're finding more and more bodies. Now it's up to 700 bodies found in a mass grave, murdered by Israel. This is terrible beyond words. And why has the UK mainstream media barely covered it? Or the United States government, for that matter.
It's like the mass graves, the 3 different mass graves are containing around 700 bodies. Up to this particular moment, around 400 bodies were unearthed and discovered. Around 300 bodies.
We go now to Rafah in Gaza, where we're joined by Akram al-Satari, a journalist based in Gaza. Welcome back to Democracy Now!, Akram. Just moments ago, Palestinian officials held a press conference in Rafah regarding the mass graves at the Nasser Medical Complex. Can you tell us the latest? I know there's a delay in the broadcast.
Good morning, Amy, to you and all the viewers. I have just come back from Khan Yunis area. I was at Nasser Hospital. I spoke to the civil defense officer who is now giving this press conference about the situation in Nasser Hospital and about the number of the people who were killed, the way they were killed, and an account of the potential suffering they have been seeing even before their death. It looks like the mass graves, the 3 different mass graves, are containing around 700 bodies. Up to this particular moment, around 400 bodies were unearthed and discovered. Around 300 bodies or even more are still in the ground. The bulldozer, one bulldozer, because of the very limited resources, is working there for the sake of just digging out the bodies. Family members are lined up there. Family members are trying and rushing with passion and with great deal of sorrow to identify the bodies of their dear. Some of them manage to identify the bodies. Then you hear the outcry, you hear the people screaming, crying, and mourning the death of their dears. But at the very same time, they feel a little bit relieved because they finally found the body of their dears. I spoke to a mother who's around 42, 43 years old. She was trying to identify her son, and then she found the body of her son. She was crying. The sister, also her daughter, was crying, and they were calling for the family to come and join them in the burial, because in our culture as Muslims and Arabs, we find a burial as the best fitting homage for the people who are dead. People are continuously digging out the bodies people are continuously, and this is very ironic, they're trying to save the dead. People, when they die, are supposed to be resting in peace, and I was saying that people in Gaza, when they die, they're neither resting nor in peace. The bodies, those bodies, were collected twice by the Israeli occupation forces. They were taken for some forensic investigation. They were returned to Nasser Hospital. They're stockpiled in this very big hole, 3 different holes, and then they were buried. And then a second time, the Israeli occupation forces came back to Nasser Hospital. They invaded all different departments of the hospital. They targeted the specialized surgery department, the reception and emergency, and they once again unearthed those hundreds of bodies and took them once again, and then they returned them to this mass grave or mass grave. So the suffering, even for the dead people in Gaza, is still continuous, and the heartache for their families is non-stop. Every single body that is being unearthed, you find tens of people rushing for the sake of identifying whether those are their relatives or otherwise. You see also many families looking into these individual graves in the Nasser Hospital area. You see written on the tombstone that this guy is a tall guy, he has a long hair, he's wearing a gray shirt, and this is all we know. And then it's up to the family to try and to find and for people to recall what their dears were wearing the day they were parting from them, what were they wearing the day they were killed. So a very emotionally draining process. The numbers are quite shocking, but the account of the loss and the death that led to that eventual mass grave is extremely shocking, where some of the people, like you have just said, some of the people were tied, some of the people had medical accessories on their hands, like the cannulas, and when they were unearthed from the ground, it was apparent that they were buried alive. Some people were tortured, some of the bodies were extremely mutilated, which means that those bodies, some of their organs were taken by the Israeli occupation. Some lost their eyes. I could see some bodies with no eyes. I could see some bodies with no liver, with no kidney. Some bodies that are, you see them like the outer skin is just covering the skeleton, and that's it. So the account of that experience is quite heart-wrenching. The families that have been suffering for the sake of just identifying their dears are also broken. They have been crying, but at least they say, we feel comfortable because we found our dears. So it gives you an insight, a glimpse into the suffering people of Gaza have been living. It gives you a glimpse into the bereavement the women, men, children and girls in Gaza have been experiencing for the last 6 months or so.
Akram Al-Satari, just for our audience to know, whenever we speak to you, we have, there's this constant noise around you, and those are drones, of course, flying overhead, as they have been for months now. But if you could respond, the European Union, the United Nations, and now also the United States have called for an independent investigation into these mass graves. So your response to that, and we're speaking to you in Rafah, if you could also describe what conditions there are on the ground.
Well, as to the independent scrutiny or investigation committee that needs to be developed, I've been working in journalism for around 16 years now. I have been hearing about the independent committees, commissions, inquiries, fact-finding committees, and international reports and tribunals about the situation in Gaza, looking into the particular details of the incidents that were taking place, investigating the death of several people in mass killing incidents, including the war in 2008, the war in 2014, and the war in 2021. I have been hearing a book about Gaza and the war in Gaza from 2014, and I was reading the exact word that I'm going to say now. Palestinians struggle to dig out the bodies. So this is something that happened in 2014. This is something that happened in 2008. This is something that happened in 21, 22, and it's still happening throughout 2023 and 2024. The international community has failed to preserve and observe the dictates of the international humanitarian law. The humanity at large is facing a challenge. All the political systems worldwide are asked now and expected to do something tangible for the sake of just saving the Gaza Strip. Rhetoric is no longer needed. Rhetoric is no longer satisfactory. We need them to do something tangible to stop the things that are happening in Gaza. Some of the things that Gazans are suggesting, the no-fly zone to protect the civilians in Gaza. Some of the things that Gazans are suggesting, that Israel should be held accountable for what they call crimes that were committed against humanity, against people, against civilians. The international humanitarian law is rich with terms and vocab that are related to what they call the civil objects. Civil objects that are protected, journalists that are protected, medical teams that are supposed to be protected, medical facilities that are supposed also to be protected. But when you review the shocking numbers about the way that the journalists are being killed, for instance, the medical teams are being killed, for instance, you conclude that the international community is failing so far to do something tangible rather than the statements, the condemnations, the calls for independent inquiries or commissions to look into the investigation. We need something tangible. And that something tangible has not been achieved so far, and Gazans have been dying constantly because of that. Something should be done, something swift should be done, otherwise the death would continue. Now in Gaza today, 79 people were killed, and an average number of around 65 to 79 is killed every day. And if nothing is done, this means the international community accepts the killing of Gazans and accepts the justification of Israel to continue that killing. Sorry. And when it comes to the situation in Rafah, around 1.4 to 1.2 million, because of the influx of people from Rafah in the last few days. People are so scared because of the looming ground operation. They understand that the Israeli occupation is going to target them, and they understand that death would be chasing them. So some of them moved from Rafah. Around 150,000 Gazans have already left Rafah and moved to the area in Al-Mawasi, a buffer zone between Rafah and Khan Yunis, in the hope that they would survive. The ones who are in Rafah and the ones who are in Khan Yunis and the ones in Gaza, at the entirety of Gaza, are all IDPs, around 2.1 million IDPs, because of the destruction of the infrastructure, the destruction of the homes, the destruction of the streets, and because of the continuous bombardment that has been taking their life. And those people are living in areas that have no infrastructure. No infrastructure means that they don't have water supplies that are regular. They don't have sewage systems. They don't have food. They don't have even drinkable water that with which they can cook the food. They don't have houses. They're living in tents and to
on and on and on it goes. Guess what? If you think it's not going to happen to you or your children or your grandchildren just because you live in the United States or Britain, we got to study some history, because it's happened to us numerous times. If these corporate fascists, these Zionists, if these people, if you know what, if they want what's under your feet, if they want your place, you think you got to say, well, I got guns. Oh, you got guns, do you? Yeah, those guns aren't going to do much. You know what? If you and I don't do something about what's going on with this Israel and what the hell it is and stop it, that Israel, which is far from being real, totally fascist, and actually makes the Nazis look like kindergarten. You think that's not coming here? I found it. You know what? I'm part of Ojibwe Cherokee. My side of the family, by the way, the reason why I'm half Dutch is because my grandfather, during World War I, he was captured twice. What's in these camps, right? For stealing potatoes to feed him and his family, and it's not a joke. And he had managed, as a young man, in his early 20s, to go from Belgium to here, United States. Met a Belgium gal, so I'm half Belgium. Got some British in me. Our ancestors, the reason why we're here is because of all this bullshit. And we're still letting it happen. This has nothing to do about the color of your skin. This has to do about humanity, about decency. You know what? What is this comes when it's your turn? Don't think, you might act like a real tough guy today, right, or gal? And you might know how to take someone out 100 different ways. It won't make a difference when a frickin' bomb lands on your fucking place and blows you to a million bits, you and your children. And don't think it won't happen here in the United States. If we don't stand up to this military industrial complex and Zionism, British Zionism, Anglo-Saxon, British Zionism, it doesn't really matter because somebody else is going to show up too. If we don't stand up from this bullshit and stop it, this is the future. Don't think you're okay. Don't think it's okay. Believe me. Just look what's happening. Watch what's happening to simple protests. People that want genocide to stop, and the thugs show up. And these thugs, you know what? When you watch Hellstorm, I'm so disgusted when you read that book and start studying history about what happened in World War II and World War I, and literally, it's the same. People think Zionism just showed up. It's been around for frickin' hundreds of years, and it was on steroids. Started on steroids for a little over 100 years ago. You got to stop living in make-believe. You got to stop living in fantasy. If you want to believe in God, that's fine. But let me tell you something. If you don't have enough courage to challenge and question your own fucking faith, you know what's going to happen? That delusion, that fantasy of yours, that faith of yours is going to lead to a whole bunch of hardship and pain for a whole bunch of people. And you're going to do it in the name of God. Can you imagine what it must be like? These Palestinians, the true Semites, did nothing but be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And by the way, it's happened tens of thousands of times before. It's going to keep on happening until we wake up. Humanity, this is nothing but being liberal, left or right, being conservative. It's about just being a decent human being. That's all it is. And remember, this could be coming to your door. We're in a day and an age where this stuff no longer can be hidden. No matter how hard you try. No matter how hard you try your censorship. And believe me, I've been censored like you can't believe. No matter how hard they try, these atrocities are going to become continually part of our lives. We're going to be watching this. In fact, it's designed to be that way. And yeah, it's true that these are the elites, the think tanks, they're saying, yeah, let's make this protest and exhaust the people, right? And it is exhausting. But at some point, we have to stop. Stop watching the fucking television. Any of these creatures are on television. Hollywood. Stop watching their movies. Don't idolize any of these stars and starlets, because they're not worth idolizing. They're not halfway. They're not even decent people. They compromise themselves just for a frickin' buck, and they don't care about what's going on. There's a lot of decent people, just average, everyday people like you and I. We don't need to deal with this stuff. We don't have to have this part of life anymore. We have to say no.
There's lots of decent people, like how there's lots of ways to make a bomb.
Yeah, there's lots of ways to destroy somebody, make a bomb, son. That doesn't mean it's any good. So people, think about it. Join these kids. They're protesting for the right reason. They're protesting for you, for your children's future. I don't care if you're uber rich, you've been destined to be the next, line of the elite and the chosen ones, the leaders of whatever corporate fascist system you're in. Guess what? No matter how much you think you're protected, you ain't protected. They got your number. They don't care about you. Remember the Georgia Guidestones? That wasn't just some conspiracy theory. They really do want to get rid of a whole bunch of us. You sit back and allow this to happen, and you do nothing about Palestine when you've had now every opportunity to see it. You do nothing. You deserve what's coming. And in some ways, if you don't do anything about it, I say that they should do the horrendous things that are going to happen.
I don't know how some of you guys don't get like a headache from the constant incessant gaslighting from all of our media. I don't just mean mainstream media. I mean most media, including the so-called independent media. Many of you know that there are ongoing protests on Columbia University campuses over the last week against the funding of that university of the Israeli regime. And in response to that protest, which has included many Jewish faculty and protesters that are in support of Palestinian freedom, there have been arrests, multiple arrests, and the threat of calling in the National Guard. Some of these lunatics are actually saying that the National Guard should come in. We want to call in the National Guard against peaceful protests on Columbia campuses. And for what? They have First Amendment rights that are protected under our Constitution to protest. And the protest has been peaceful, but you know what's happened? All of our media, all of our Congress, and the fucking president have put out statements condemning the protests. And why are they condemning the protests? Not because anything violent happened, not because there were any calls for violence, but because people were chanting Palestinian liberation slogans. That's the part I need to key you guys into that you need to remember and understand. When you hear in the media, or you hear Biden's administration, or you hear politicians putting out statements on Twitter going, "We condemn this harassment and blah, 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 blah." There have been no calls for violence. When they say that, they're talking about people chanting about Palestinian freedom. That's what they do. They conflate that. It's the same shit that they did to the professors of the universities they ended up getting fired. It conflated chants of Palestinian liberation with threats and violence and got those professors to step down. So please be aware when you hear stuff like that, whether it's from our media or from politicians putting out statements or from the White House, because they are lying. It is taking the chance of liberation and conflating those with threats. They are lying and they know it. And people have First Amendment rights and they have the right to chant those freedom slogans whether it makes you uncomfortable or not. And if you think that protesters, including Jewish protesters for peace, protesting on behalf of Palestinian freedom should be arrested or that the National Guard should be called in, you are a fascist. And one last thing, the fact that this is what they're focusing on, that the media is putting so much attention on this, that our Congress people are putting so much attention to condemn these protesters and their right to free speech, and that our president is putting out statements out about it, all of them are deplorable because they've had nothing to say about all the people that were just bombed in Rafah. 22 people were killed in Rafah, including 18 children. They've had nothing to say about a mass grave being discovered under a hospital just this week. And they have had nothing to say about the countless Congress people in our Congress, as well as countless Israeli officials who have come out and straight up made genocidal claims against Palestinians. Nothing to say about that. Nothing to say about that. But you're really upset, offended, and concerned about a couple students getting uncomfortable at a pro-freedom protest. That's what needs to be top of the news. And the message that they're sending, both implicit and explicit, people like Tapper Jake over on CNN doing fucking PR for all the cry bullies on this Columbia College campus, instead of doing his fucking job, the implication is that Palestinian lives don't matter. They don't matter because it's not worth it it to the White House or to any of the moron talking heads over on our fucking corporate trash ass media to actually report on what's really happening or things that are really important or to give weight to some of the things that these people in Congress and in the Likud have said. Oh no, that would be reporting. Instead, let's just bring Tapper Jake out again so he can talk about how uncomfortable some of the students are. Breaking news, a bunch of college students wouldn't leave the campus. You're a clown, Tapper Jake.
Jewish Karen caught on video lying to the police.
Is not in harm's way. Nobody is going to hurt them. Nobody is going to attack them. This person is not in harm's way.
They are free to leave.
Nobody is going to hurt them. Nobody is going to attack them. This person is not in harm's way.
Yes, they're right in front of me right now. They're doing signs.
This person is not in harm's way.
I need funds, genocide. I need help. I know that, but they're surrounding me. They won't let me move.
No, you are free to move. You are free to move. She is free to move.
You are free to move. You are free to move.
They're surrounding me right now.
She's free to move. She's free to leave. She is free to leave. No one is surrounding her.
Nobody is surrounding you.
She is free to leave.
You are free to leave.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's Western University. These are students. They're surrounding me. I can take a picture.
She's free to leave. No one is surrounding her.
I just need help.
No one is surrounding
her. No one is surrounding her.
I'm just walking my dog. I need help.
She's free to leave.
I'm a Jewish American. I need help. Please come and help me. I'm wearing a white Adidas shirt. I have a dog with me. Walking a dog. I need help.